Hi, guys. Welcome to our second episode of the Leadership Forum live stream. I'm going to go ahead and invite Marie. We'll see if it lets me because it asked me if I wanted to invite her ahead of time, and it told me she wasn't my friend, which is really sad because I'm pretty sure she's my friend. So if there's, let's see, how do I get Marie? Here we go. I think that works. We'll see if that works. All right, so today we are talking about the benefits of thought leadership. So we wanted to talk about this topic early because, as you might imagine, we have opinions. And those opinions we want to share, and we want to share your opinions. So let me see. Let me pull this up here, make sure it's working. I'll give people a chance to join us live. There we go. Marie is watching. Bring them on camera. Add. Let's see if this works. This is my first time doing this. I told Marie I was scared to do it.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. I'd never
Worked.
been on this side of the process before, so very
Well, I tried to
fascinating.
invite you. I tried to invite you before the live stream started, and it told me that you were not my friend. So
Facebook.
I know, I was very offended. So I'm glad that it decided we could be friends
Me
again.
too. Awesome. I'm just going to
Awesome.
post this link real quick as you finish the intro.
Yes. And I will also go ahead and share it in all of my places so that we can have as many people join us as possible. And if you're catching the replay, we do check all of the comments, so please feel free to comment along and let us know what your thoughts are about the benefits of thought leadership, because we want to know what you think, whether you're catching us live or on the replay. We like you and we care about your opinions, and we want to keep this as a dialogue. We don't want to just be blabbing at you what we think. We want to have a conversation because our own views are evolving over time, and we think that getting as many different perspectives as possible is super important.
Totally. Totally agree. Which is why we actually sort of prepped this week to ask you guys
A little bit.
what are some of the benefits that you see of thought leadership for your business. And you guys had some amazing responses, and we're going to highlight some of those here shortly. But yes, today's all about, why does thought leadership, why is it something that you should consider in your business? Why is it something that, you could leverage, and also how not to think about it as sort of a means to an end in the wrong way, but in the right way. Because turns out people are really savvy and can see through your crap. And they know if you're sort of leaning into this for the wrong reasons or for the right reasons. So
Yeah.
this is all assuming that you have the right reasons, the things that thought leadership can do for you.
Yes, absolutely. And so just kind of as a little precursor to us going over what you guys had to say about the topic, we mentioned in, I think it was last week's live stream, that we had gotten some pushback from people talking about why they didn't necessarily think that thought leadership was either a valid thing to claim, or maybe people claimed it for the wrong reasons. And that's one of the reasons why we really want to talk about the benefits of thought leadership from when it comes from the right place. And we want to make that distinction super clear, because thought leadership, being a thought leader, the act of stepping into thought leadership can absolutely help your business. But when it becomes just a marketing tool for your business, that's when it gets kind of gross. And
Yeah.
we don't want it to be gross.
No, we want nothing in your business to feel gross
Yeah,
and nothing in
don't do
your
that.
thought leadership platform to feel gross. And in fact, I think you'll hear as we dig into the benefits that we see around leveraging thought leadership as a business owner, that it really does all come down to feeling good about it and the positive outcomes, not the skeevy, quick marketing trick outcomes.
Yeah, we don't like those.
No.
So let's start by diving into some of the things that you said. So on Monday, we posed the question to you, what do you think some of the benefits of thought leadership are, either being a thought leader yourself or just being around someone that you consider a thought leader. And we got a lot of really great feedback. So we want to start with what you guys had to say before we talk about what we think.
Yes. So just going super quickly down the list, Jennifer said that to her, one of the biggest benefits was staying ahead of the curve. Totally. Being ahead of the game, being able to think in a way where you're one of the first to be laying the groundwork does show that you are innovative, that you're creative, and that you're not afraid to take a stand for something that you believe in. And then Fiona had a 2-point response that I loved. She was talking about taking thought where it's never been before, so sort of similar to Jennifer in that way, but also she was highlighting the benefits of thought leadership as a way to create collaboration opportunities, to build a movement through collective thinking. This was really exciting to me because none of us live in a vacuum, especially thought leaders. And what's the point of being a thought leader if you're not going to have a community, if you're not going to be seeking out collaboration, if you're not going to be helping other people step up? So I really loved your response, Fiona.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a super big part of it because we don't live in a vacuum, right? We don't live in a bubble. And regardless of what our role is, whether we are the person stepping into the leadership role or we are part of a community where someone else is the leader, it's important to have that kind of collective, collaborative feel and environment. So Megan says, I think the benefits are innovating so you are able to constantly serve your market better. And I love that because that's what we need to constantly be thinking about as entrepreneurs, right? So that ties the entrepreneurship piece into it. We always want to be serving our people better, our clients, our customers, our market is desperate for that innovation. They need that innovation because they're being swamped with a lot of the same old thing all the time. So this opportunity to step forward and present the innovation is really exciting and a really huge benefit, not just for you on your side of the fence, but for the people you serve as well. And then Amy said, being a thought leader in my role as a parenting and step family coach is allowing me to put my support and strategies out into a world that is underserviced. That's amazing. I love that because I think that's a lot of people's experience with thought leadership or with new ideas that come across their existence because they're like, oh, I never thought about that being a thing, or I never thought about it in that way before. And it totally opens their eyes to a new way of thinking or looking at things. And Amy went on to say, I've been to a few networking events where I'm the unicorn in a room full of real estate agents and financial services people, and I love the reaction I get when I tell people what I do. Yeah, isn't that amazing when you tell people what you do and they're like, I never thought about that, but that's a super important thing. And that's how you kind of know, like, you've got something. There's something really important behind what you're doing, and it's filling a gap in the marketplace.
Yes. And I think, too, this proves the point of you don't actually have to be first ever to come up with the idea, but you may be the first exposure someone else has had to the idea. Mm-hmm. And your way of expressing it may stick to their brain, a little bit more effectively than someone else's way of expressing it just because, they jive with your personality or the way that you're able to just express it through story or metaphor is really resonant for them. So don't discount if you feel like there's other people who are doing what you're doing or have your big idea. They're not going to be sharing it the way you are. So super powerful. Yes. So moving on down the list, Leanna was talking about how the benefit for her is actually within the creation, that it was with this sort of expansiveness. And I love that because some people truly do thrive on creative energy and know that their audience does as well. And so if that is actually sort of an intrinsic benefit for you, awesome. I certainly feel that way. I know that I feel like if I don't have creativity in my day job, in my everyday, I'm going to just start feeling really sort of hollow and blah after a while. So totally resonate with you in that, Leanna. Melina was talking about how stepping into thought leadership requires of her stepping into her inner confidence. And then the cool thing about that is that her confidence actually yields confidence and power within other people because they're able to see that reflected in her and then see it in themselves as well and step forward. So I love that like it does require us to work on ourselves first, but when we do that, the results can be really powerful for us and the people around us.
Totally. And it's like this trickle down effect, right? Like we are stepping into a certain role that empowers other people to step into that role for themselves and to explore things that maybe they wouldn't have explored otherwise or wouldn't have felt like it gives that permission. And that's a super important piece of being a leader is giving other people permission to be leaders and letting people know that it's okay to look at things in this creative new way or to step into confidence that they may be a little bit uncertain about at the forefront. And like anything else, the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Hey, Evelyn. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, guys. Thank you for joining us live. Let us know if you have any comments about what the benefits of thought leadership are for you. And I'm going to get to yours, Rochelle, in just a minute. We're reading the comments from Monday's post. And so Vix said, I think thought leadership allows you to get really clear on your message and allows you to tell your story through unique selling points. You can and should do this all the time, but thinking of it through a lens of education versus selling is important for many who are just getting started. I love this idea of tying it to messaging, of course. I love that.
I mean, we're all biased.
True, right? Right. Sorry, we are. But it's so true. Your story is unique, but not just the experiences that you've had are unique, the way in which you approach your thought leadership is unique. And once you identify sort of those points, that's a really easy way to get super clear on your message and how you present yourself and your business to the world. And this idea, I like the second part, this idea of a lens through education versus selling, so that especially for people who are a little bit gun shy when it comes to selling, this idea of opening the door to helping someone learn something that not only are you really good at, but also really passionate about changing the conversation around, then that's an amazing way to look at it and to kind of rethink the conversations that you're having within your business. Evelyn says, confession and question, is it okay if I don't consider myself to be a thought leader? Absolutely, yes. It's sort of like if everybody considered themselves a thought leader at like every point, then there's not really much left, right? It's sort of everybody would be going in their own direction and there would be total anarchy. But I do think that everyone has moments of thought leadership within their industry or within their personal experience. They don't necessarily need to identify as a thought leader, but they can have moments of this innovation. If we go back to our definition from last week, moments of innovation, moments of excitement, moments of creativity and growing a platform or reaching people in new and innovative ways. And I think that that's definitely something that everyone can access, even if they don't consider themselves to be a thought leader. My dogs are barking. Sorry.
And my dog just made the most sad little grumbly sound ever. I don't know if you guys heard that.
I'm going to put them in their cages. Come on, guys, go to sleep.
So hopefully that helps, Evelyn. And I think it is just a matter of like identifying those times and places where you feel like you have maybe, Casey. Okay. Wow. That totally derailed me. What even was I talking about?
She's very unhappy.
She's so cute. Yes, the innovation. So you have like a way of thinking about something that is unique. And I know from experience of talking to you that you do, because a lot of times it's through like your own stories or through your perspective. You've used like metaphors when talking with me before that I'd never heard before. Like that right there is some innovation, right? You have expertise and that's huge, right? There's areas in which you're an expert. There's areas in which you're growing just like everybody. And so leaning into those where you're an expert and finding sort of the happy medium of those. And then the places where you feel like you have some influence or potential for impact. So those places, even if it's small, right? Like it could be a quiet impact where you're just having a one-on-one conversation with somebody, but it changes the way they're looking at something. That to us is thought leadership. and it creates action within somebody else. It creates movement within somebody else. So I think that's part of it, right? Is like we have a job to do, which is defining and then debunking things that we don't consider to be thought leadership, but other people might, right? Like this is our own little brand of thought leadership. To us, we feel like it's a lasting brand. It's like the stuff that matters from taking a stand. And so we're trying to kind of get past what is maybe a little bit in vogue right now and just talk about like what's like the heart behind it, you know, and how is it something that all of us could aspire to step into in a certain way that feels right for us.
Yeah. I love what you said, Marie, about creating movement in people. So not necessarily like creating a movement, like as you think of it externally, like, I don't know, the Women's March. That is a movement, a very large movement. But you can create movement in individual people. You can create movement in the way that they perceive things. You can create movement in the way that they feel connected to people and things. And that is a quiet and smaller version of thought leadership, but it isn't necessarily... Like, that doesn't mean that it's a lesser version. It's just as valid and just as important, I think. And I think that's probably going to be a topic of one of these forums at some point, is the different types of ways in which leadership shows up. Because I think there's this idea that it looks a certain way, and it doesn't. And in fact, the point of leadership, especially thought leadership, is that it's different for everyone, and it shows up in different ways for different people. So I think that, you know, there's a danger almost in sort of lumping it into one definition or one type of leadership, because it restricts us. And let's see, Rochelle says, I like the idea of quiet conversations still being thought leadership. Absolutely, yeah. We don't all have to scream what we believe from the mountaintop for it to be heard. And we have an opportunity to impact people in our families, people in our communities, people in our lives, just as much as the people that we work with in sort of a more distant way. And it's up to us how far we want to take that and how we want to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. And Eveline, I think this is resonating, so that's good. She says, I'm with Rochelle. I like that idea, or love that idea. I do a lot of quiet shifting with people, quiet movement, reframing perspectives in a small way, which I think is super powerful, right? And then she adds, I guess I always thought that thought leaders had to be fancy leaders on fancy pedestals. Yes, with curly cues and everything. But I mean, think about this too, right? Like those thought leaders that we do think of as standing on the fancy pedestals, like ultimately, like what do people want? If you're like, okay, if you could just go to lunch with anybody and they pick like Gary Vee or something, right? Like it's because they want to have a quiet conversation with him. It's not because they just want like advanced copy of his next book or whatever. Like we all have that power within us to have those important, impactful, quiet conversations that really do change how someone thinks. And like, I know personally from like working with business coaches and life coaches and like mindset coaches and people in like a very quiet one-on-one setting or like a very small intimate group, that has totally changed how I operate on a day-to-day basis. And it trickles, if there's that trickle down, not trickle down economics, trickle down thought leadership.
Yeah.
We can debate on how much the economics works, but I think this definitely does, because it shows up in like how I'm reflecting to my clients.
Yes, totally. It makes me think, so back when I was getting into the teaching field, I had to put together like basically a portfolio so that I could get hired and people would know that I knew what I was talking about. And one of the things we had to write was our philosophy of education. And I wrote mine about writing, of course, but specifically about being a ghostwriter. So a ghostwriter is someone who writes a book for another author, and it gets published under that author's name. So you don't know who the actual writer is. Sometimes they're acknowledged in like the dedication, but you really don't know who actually wrote the book. And the person who actually wrote the book doesn't really get the credit. The author's name, the author on the cover does. So I wrote my philosophy of education about being a ghostwriter of students' lives.
Aww.
Because when you look at a student who goes through, up through, at least in the U.S., up through grade 12, they have dozens of teachers. They usually, after 5 or 6 years after high school, don't remember their teachers' names. but you have an opportunity within the classroom to have a very profound impact on that student, on how they perceive things, on how they think about things, on how they view the world, and of course on the subject matter. So I perceived it as being a ghostwriter of students' lives. I had a very small section of a very small chapter of their lives, and I could do with it whatever I wanted, and hopefully I'd use it for good and not evil. But it was an opportunity.
I don't know.
I did. I used it for good. Although I did terrify my students once teaching them Dante's Inferno. That's another story.
Okay, next week.
Next week. But the idea there is that I wasn't looking for a pedestal to stand on. I wasn't looking to get up and know everything. And that goes into what Amy said. Amy said, I think a lot of people, myself included, tend to think of thought leadership means you must be the only one who knows, which is super intimidating. Yeah, it's super intimidating to have to be the one who knows everything, because we don't.
No one does, right?
No one does. Yeah. I mean, we don't know everything about thought leadership. We don't even know everything about messaging, guys. Like, we are still learning all the time, every day. And that's part of the journey. That's part of the fun. And we want to approach thought leadership from this perspective of opening the door to not knowing everything, but still having opinions and things to say and ways to add to the conversation and suggest and look at things in a new light. And I think that's super important, is that reframe, around being knowledgeable, passionate, and wanting to share your knowledge about something that makes the idea of thought leadership feel way more achievable. And I think that's the important part. That's the key, is how are you contributing? Not necessarily from a pedestal, although if you want one, that's totally cool too. But if you don't want one, doesn't mean you can't be a thought leader in some way.
Yes, at least in our definition. Love it. And I do want to circle back around to Monday's post, because we didn't get to Rochelle's response there, which I think is one of my faves, which is about helping other people. Like, one of the benefits of thought leadership as a business owner is helping other people think bigger and take action. And I think that's the key, right? Is like, this totally goes back to that whole ghostwriting idea of like, all you're doing is setting the stage and making it possible for someone to think about something in a new way, and then enabling them and like empowering them to take steps towards like positive impact in their lives or in their business or whatever it is. So that's key, right? Like, that's the leadership portion. It's not just about like having a thought and then just sitting on it and never sharing it with anyone ever, but like presenting it and like getting clear on it, and B, presenting it in a way that does enable that movement within other people. Otherwise, like, what's the point of it? I mean, maybe if it helps you, cool, like, that's great. But, if it has power to help you, then it probably has power to help other people too. So, yes, love your responses, everybody. Thank you so much for responding to that. We also have our own thoughts. And before we got on today's call, I was like, Jesse, why don't we each come up with our top 2 benefits that we see personally for thought leadership, and then we can unveil them to each other. So we don't know what the other person's going to say. So it'll be interesting to see if we have identical responses, which probably won't be a surprise if we do. But
right.
But if you guys have any other thoughts on it or questions as they come up, feel free to pop them in the comments. We'll be responding as we go. So who wants to go first?
I can go. My two are kind of linked, but I'm just going to share the first one for right now, which was sort of already said a little bit. I think Megan kind of touched on it in her comment, but I think it's important, and I think I kind of want to expand on it a little bit. So the first benefit of thought leadership that I put that's really important to me is the avoidance of complacency and pursuit of new ideas. So for me, one of the things that based on my personality, I'm an INTJ for Myers-Briggs people, which means I am constantly looking for ways to streamline, ways to innovate, ways to connect the dots in new ways. And so for me, like, the bane of my existence is complacency, is when things get stagnant. And I think that a huge benefit of thought leadership is avoiding that stagnant place that a lot of industries find themselves in, and not just within entrepreneurship, like pulling it outside of entrepreneurship for a second, going back to teaching, since that's the other field I know crap ton about. Within teaching, there is so much complacency and stagnation, and a lot of it is due to red tape and can't be helped necessarily. But the existence of that stagnation and that complacency is what leads one of the things that leads so many teachers to get so frustrated. And thought leaders are able to rethink the system and find new pathways and create new pathways that allow new ideas to exist. Another example, the SpaceX launch recently. The existence of SpaceX as a company and what it is doing for space travel and the possibilities it is opening, or even just backing up to Tesla as a company and what it's doing for automobile travel and things like that. Those pieces of innovation are allowing us to not be complacent with the way that things have always happened, the way that we've always launched rockets into space, the way that we've always driven cars, the way that we've always approached students in the classroom. If we still did things the way we always did in the classroom, we'd still always be sitting in rows and shutting up while we listen to the teacher drone on. But we know that that's not effective. We know that that actually results in less learning for a lot of people. So for me, one of the biggest benefits of thought leadership is paving the way for new ideas so that we don't become stagnant in running around in our old rut and just digging it deeper and deeper.
Love
that. Was my
that.
number one.
Love that. I've definitely heard in corporate circles too, like pushback. And it's so funny when people will say in a meeting, like, well, but because we've always done it that way is not a valid reason. And these kind of looks of like, what? Show up on people's faces. But those are the people who are pushing, right? Those are the people who want to innovate. And so since we're our own CEO of our thought leadership platform and business, like it's on us to be those innovators. Yeah. So I love your response. Okay.
Also, let me interrupt you real quick. Evelyn says, I'd totally go for lunch with Audrey Hepburn, which I love. That's amazing. And now I want to know from everybody, if you could go to lunch with one thought leader, who would you go to lunch with?
Yeah.
Drop it in the comments and let us know.
I have to decide now too, probably. Fascinating.
I know who I'd go with.
Oh gosh, Corinne says, like, I've been in those meetings before. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, yeah. So, love it. Okay, so one of my two reasons that I feel that thought leadership is a huge benefit to business owners, and this kind of goes along with what Vix was saying, right, is that it does force you to get super, super clear on your values. So it does require that inner work. It requires you to really get introspective about why you're doing all of this and like, what do you not even want to accomplish in terms of like, well, I want an audience this size or whatever, but like, what is the change you want to create? Maybe you don't have to look at like what that looks like exactly or how you're going to do it. You don't have to say like, well, it's definitely going to happen because of a book, or it's definitely going to happen because I get on a stage, or I get an email list of at least however many hundreds of thousands of people. Like, that's not the point. It's just about like, how do you want to create that positive impact? And then like, because people are so savvy at being able to sniff out inauthenticity, that's a hard word. It's a lot of vowels. It requires then all of a sudden you're accountable to those values. So that's one of the things that I really love about thought leadership. You can't really hide behind not just lack of innovation, but just sort of a professional front-facing demeanor that, a lot of we in corporate speak and sort of empty stuff. But instead, you're required to live into those values publicly. You're going to be scrutinized on them, and you're going to scrutinize yourself on them. So I love that it like always keeps us like focused on what's good for us.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And of course, it ties back to the messaging piece, because once you know what it is that you're pushing out there, like, it's so much easier to talk about it in a meaningful way.
Totally.
All right. My second one was sort of hearkening back to something we talked about last week. I put the creation of community and that feeling of not being alone. So last week I talked a little bit about and I actually did in a post earlier this week too, about the whole concept of introversion and how it came into my life. through the book Quiet by Susan Cain. She has a TED Talk. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's amazing. It's one of the most viewed TED Talks I think that they've ever put out. When she approached the idea of introversion, it was not a new concept. It had been around for years. But she approached it in a new way and came out talking about it in a new way, and in doing so allowed people to come together and create a community. And I think this is the important part. The community was based around this idea of I'm not alone. And I think there are a lot of people who have these innovative thoughts, ideas, or feelings, or who have a common thread, but are afraid to talk about them because they don't necessarily either know how to articulate them, or they think something is wrong with them, or they think maybe the idea won't be taken seriously, all of these things. And all it takes is one person to step up and say, hey, this is what's going on, for other people to be like, oh my God, me too. And that's what happened with me with introversion. It was like, oh, I'm not a crazy person who just can't make it through a day without completely crashing, getting a splitting headache, and wanting to hide in a bathroom. That's a normal thing for people who are introverted and in very high stress jobs that require a lot of interaction. And that moment of realization that I am not alone was huge for me. And yes, Susan Cain had a very big platform to use, TED Talk, but she didn't set out looking for a big platform. She set out looking for a way to change the conversation around introversion, be like, hey, these people who feel this way aren't wrong. And so I think that the creation of community and allowing people to have a safe space where they can explore and create and identify with one another is huge and is a really important part of thought leadership and of the community that you guys are building. And I think that's where that quiet leadership comes into play again, where, yeah, maybe you're not building a community of 20,000 people. Maybe you're building a community of like 2 people, but you're creating a safe space for them where they can really be true to who they are in the context of whatever your thought leadership is about. So I think that that's a really important benefit, is opening the door to those conversations and to allowing people to feel like they belong.
Love it. Beautiful. As expected, you stole one of mine.
Sorry.
So good. I love that. And I love that you, again, bring it back to the small, intimate space and the impact that's possible there. So I did actually prepare for this possibility and have a backup third reason. So I'll go into that. So I think this kind of builds upon that, right? But like, once you have that safe space and you allow people to explore in a way that feels good for them, or they can kind of find their own way forward with your innovative idea. This is the thing that I think is so cool, and that I think is maybe the biggest power of thought leadership, and like maybe where I would love to see things go to for my innovative ideas, which is that when you create that movement within somebody else through your thought leadership, you're able to create a movement with its own momentum. So a few like bigger examples, and then I'll go to some smaller ones too, because, you know, we aren't all sitting on email lists of more people than we can count. So a couple of big examples. I think about things that are really impactful for my own life. So for instance, I only did it one time, but NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, started as somebody's brainchild, right? Like somebody was like, I just want to get people writing. Like I want people to feel like they have permission to like set aside just a little bit of time and create something amazing that they're really proud of. Somebody had that idea, and now probably tens of thousands of people every year do it and write novels. They may not do anything with them, but like it's amazing that many people set aside their November evenings in between family gatherings and work and family and like all the other things that are going on in their lives, and they sit down and they write a novel in a month. I did it one time. It was amazing. I think about it all the time. I'm still like super proud of the fact that I did that. Another thing, I think this one originated with REI, but the whole opting outside movement, as opposed to going to the shopping mall on Black Friday, that has become a movement under its own momentum, that people are very much consciously choosing to spend their time on that day with their family, being outside, enjoying nature, avoiding consumerism. I don't have any problem with shopping. I'm not like a shopper, but like I'm not like anti Black Friday or anything like that. But I really love that like there's a whole movement of people now who decide to spend the day doing that and spending the time like with their family and enjoying being outside and being healthy and working off all that turkey. So I love that. And those are two movements that were started by somebody, probably, you know, in a marketing department somewhere at REI or whatever it is. But like that has created a movement that I don't think is going away anytime soon. On a small scale, though, it's still possible. So, like, I think back to this past year working with Adrienne Dorison. So one of the ideas that she presented for us, because we have a time slot calendar. So in order to manage all of our client projects and make sure that we actually have time for everybody and we make time for everybody and we give each of our clients our all, we want to make sure that we limit the number of copy clients that we work with at a given time. But we were running into this problem where we're going into like feast and famine mode all the time, and it wasn't awesome. If you've been there, give us a shout out. I think we probably all have at some point or another, unless our entire business is based on, you know, retainers or something. And so one of the ideas that she presented for us, but the whole group of women who were there together working with her, was like, you should always be doing something to acquire clients. Like take that time each day. And then once a client drops off of your time slot calendar, you suddenly have more time to spend on acquiring new clients. This is not rocket science, but I'd never heard this idea before. And it like blew my mind. And now it has momentum and movement in our own business. We're creating structures around it. We're putting it into practice. It's making a huge difference, right? So I think that's an example of a place where thought leadership, which she displays beautifully all the time, I think, is something that like has created a movement within our own business. This is now something that we can pass along to our clients. It can spread. It can have momentum. This is not the kind of thing that Adrienne would want to say and then have us keep to ourselves, right? Like this is just a good business practice. This is a good practice for health in your business, financial health, and also probably your emotional well-being too. If you, like me, still sometimes attach your well-being to how much money's in your bank account, which is a whole nother topic, which we should probably get into at some point. But yeah, no, it's one of those things that like she wants it to have wings. She wants it to have momentum. She wants the people she works with to be successful. And then she wants their clients to be successful. Like all of that is good.
Yeah.
So that's just another example there of how like just in a small private conversation with just a few people, you can truly create momentum and movement through your innovative ideas.
Totally. Profit First is another great example.
Yes.
Which we talk about endlessly because it's an amazing book that if you haven't read, go read it immediately.
Yes.
Because it's a simple idea. Very, very simple idea. The whole book, the entire book is about take your profit first and just distribute the rest of the money, you know, into the buckets they need to go to based on your expenses and taxes and things like that. But that's the premise. Kind of flips the usual accounting methods on their head because usually profit is last. You know, take your revenue, subtract your expenses, and then you have profit left over. This is taking your revenue, subtracting your profit, and then you get expenses, which does a number on how you finance things within your business. But a good number because it allows you to always take profit in your business. Super, super simple idea. Even for us who are not accounting buffs at all, like the very, very first hire we made in our business was an accountant because, oh God, accounting terrifies us. But that super simple idea has led to huge impacts within the way we run our business. And because the book itself ended up being successful, a lot of people have similar stories. So it started as a very small idea. It started with him practicing it in his own business, him practicing it with his own clients. And then it became a book that then was available for other people to start practicing. So starting small, and then over time, it steamrolls. It's a snowball effect, and it builds up momentum, sometimes totally unintentionally, because the idea is so innovative and helps people in such interesting ways and creates that movement. And if it never snowballs, that's fine too. If it wants to stay, if you want your idea to stay within a small, intimate bubble, because that's what makes sense for you and for your type of leadership, that's totally fine too. And that can be a benefit as well. As a thought leader, you can benefit from creating as large or as small of a community as makes sense for you and your type of leadership.
Yes. Yes. So good. Okay. I think that's all we had for you guys today. Although I think Jesse did prepare something, right? Was that for today? Okay. So I'm being really organized, guys.
Yeah. We do not have our shit together. Sorry. It's fine. So this is our second live stream, and we are going to continue to do these almost every Wednesday. And next week is going to be the exception. So once a month, instead of getting together here on Facebook Live, we want to invite you into a Zoom room with us so that it's less of us yapping and reading your comments and more of all of us talking together. Amy says,
do you hope that? Is that really the word, hope?
You haven't seen me dance.
Or me. It's a lot of...
Maybe if you go to the Zoom room next week, you'll get an interpretive dance.
Wow. Okay, that's on you.
No promises.
Oh, dear.
That is just a pure bribe. So next week, we are going to be talking about the topic of where thought leadership and entrepreneurship collide. So we sort of touched on this topic in very general terms, but we're going to dive deeper into it. And Marie and I are not leading this discussion. We will facilitate this discussion. We want you to come with your thoughts on where thought leadership and entrepreneurship collide so that we can have a conversation about it all as peers, because we're all a part of this conversation. We are not the thought leadership gurus standing up here on our fancy pedestal. We want you to be a part of the conversation too. So if you want to join us next week, the only thing we ask is that you sign up in advance just so that we can keep an eye on the number of seats. Zoom rooms have a limited number of people without us paying more money. So, it's like 50 people.
Because so profit first, and we know how much expense we have.
Right. My dog is barking again. Please ignore that. So if you want to join us next week, it'll be exact same time. It will just be in a Zoom room instead of on Facebook Live. You can go to northstarmessaging.com/roundtable, and Maria will pop that into the comments. And just submit your name and your email address, and that will let us send you a reminder with the Zoom link, and it will also let us know how many people to expect to show up. Again, the topic is where thought leadership and entrepreneurship collide. It is a free form, let's sit down and chat and really just talk about what it means for us. If you want to bring your business to the table and talk about what it means in your business or what you want it to mean, or if you're not sure if it means anything for your business, all of that is totally cool and legit. We just want to talk to you guys and all of us be able to use our mouth sounds and our words instead of, Marie and I talking at each other and you guys typing. So we're really excited about this opportunity to sit down and chat with you guys and to sort of level the playing field and have all of us join the conversation.
Bring a friend.
So make sure you go ahead. Yes. Make sure you go ahead and sign up and let us know that you are interested in showing up. And we are going to try and do it once a month. We'll see how it goes this first time, see if people are interested in it, if you guys like it, if it's something that makes sense for us. And if it does, we will keep it going once a month. So stay tuned for more information about that. But in the meantime, you can sign up for next week's session.
That's my interpretive dance.
Marie's interpretive dance. I think that's all we had for you this week, guys. Yep. So if you're catching the replay, let us know what your thoughts are. If you watched live, thank you for joining us live. Feel free to share this video out and tag people who you think might benefit from the conversation. And we look forward to chatting with you in the group and live next week.
Bye.
Bye, guys.